Greetings, everyone, and welcome here to the Tansson Talk Show, where our mission here every week is to help bring people together. I'm always delighted to share these conversations with each of you, and I'm excited to be speaking here today. Let's welcome today's guest. Welcome, and I'm glad that you could be on.
Glad I could be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so delighted to have you. And so, first of all, how's your day going thus far?
Pretty good.
Yeah, that is good to hear. And so, before we go ahead and get started, I did want to allow a moment for you to go ahead and introduce yourself for those who may be watching and listening here today.
All right. Well, hello. I am a sophomore at the University of Dayton. I am a photography major with a minor in women and gender studies. That is a mouthful. Um, and I mainly work at the Human Rights Center on campus as a student engagement intern, doing podcast work and also just general event photography work. And I also did that on and off campus with other departments. So, yeah.
Well, that's really great to hear, and I really am excited for us to get into this conversation here today. Yeah,
I'm excited as well.
and so I did want to go ahead and start off by asking, so what really got you into, doing photography?
Oh gosh, I've loved photography since I was a child. I've been in the arts since I was a child as well. Anything from dance to band to choir to theater, I've done it. Any of those you can like list off anything, I've probably already done it. Um, but my father's also really keen on photography, though it's not his passion. Um, so much so that the summer before I left to go to UD for my freshman year, we were looking for different phones with better cameras, and we were scavenging the entire internet trying to find something, which we eventually did. But I've always loved photography. I love being able to tell stories without words. I've always been a massive storyteller.
I love that. I love, and you mentioned too that your dad has a bit of interest, but not necessarily as a profession like you are, but but has some of that interest. And so I guess if you could really pinpoint like a part of like when this started, because you mentioned that you've been a part of, anything from dance to band to choir, is which one, I guess, for you was the first one for you, or was that photography for you?
Dance was first. Dance was first. Unfortunately, I did not have the greatest of teachers, and I had a career-ending injury a couple years later. So there went that. Oh yeah, the injury was entirely unrelated. I was playing basketball at the time when it happened. Um, and then I was doing band and choir about a year or two after I started dance. Um, Choir ended around fifth grade, band ended after eighth. Um, so I knew I was going to pick up theater in high school. Specifically, stage crews. I adore playing with lights. If it wasn't clear by the fact that I'm a photography major now, I love playing with lights. I love playing with sound, and it was just a really fun experience to have. And that's around when I picked up photography and videography.
That is, really cool though that that you mentioned that of course you like playing with lights. And if I remember correctly, you actually are experienced in both, analog photography and digital photography.
Yes.
And so which one did you, get into first? And because I'm really interested in hearing about that.
So freshman year of high school, I took a photography course. Unfortunately, the teacher was just not the greatest either. Um, but we started in the darkroom. We were the last group to ever do darkroom photography before they were going to overhaul the entire thing and turn it into a Mac lab, to do digital stuff. So I got to play with all of the darkroom materials and deal with my hands filling with vinegar afterwards because that's just what those chemicals smell like, unfortunately. Um, so I got to learn how light works and how that you're going to have to be in pitch black if you're going to do anything with actual film canisters. That's a fun experience. It's fun to do stuff blind, I will say. Um, but then I picked it up again in the spring for my foundation photography course, where before midterms we did two projects that were darkroom photography, where I did the actual film loading process to get it from the camera into a canister to get it developed, and I did that entire process from start to finish. And then I got to relearn everything I learned back then and actually apply it to genuine projects, and I really enjoyed that process.
Yeah, that's really cool though that you were able to experience the darkroom photography before they changed it into a Mac lab. As unfortunate as that is,
Very
but
unfortunate.
yeah. And were there a lot of people like in your classes interested in darkroom photography?
Yeah. A lot of people take it as an art course here, as part of our gen eds. So I had people that were creative writing that were in there too. And then you have a couple of us that were graphic design and, of course, photography majors. So we needed the course no matter what we did. Um, but it makes you really appreciate where photography started. Because we did some history of photography, like a very much like a crash course of it, and how it was just like a little pinhole in a box to what it is today. And it makes you really appreciate the process and how far we've come.
Yeah, and I feel like that can also be applied to as your journey as a photographer, even like going
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
from where you started to where you are now, or rather everything in the arts. It seems that for you.
I am a jack of all trades. What can I say?
And so since you've mentioned that that you've done a little bit of anything and everything, at least at some point in time or another, for the art, yeah, aside from photography, has there been anything else that you have picked up within the past few years of being in college?
Um, ooh, I mean, I've loved drawing my entire life, but I really started taking it seriously last year. I took a foundation drawing course where we were drawing still lifes, and I got to really hone in on value because that's always been my sticking point. I just seem to suck at value no matter what project I'm doing. I got to learn different mediums. I got to work with charcoal and ink and graphite and like really understand the medium. And um, basically, it takes two to tango with these materials, and I got to really learn that tango.
I love that. And yeah, but even like what you're saying, like for the different angles, no pun intended, for photography, that it's so interesting seeing like the digital side of things. I'm sure for you, like how was it like sort of learning or relearning the digital side after having experienced the dark room photography?
Um, it was actually my first experience playing with an actual digital camera that wasn't my phone or a dinky little point and shoot that I've had since I was like 12. Um, so I got to actually learn how to use a Nikon. We used anywhere from like D3300s to like the 5000 series. And it's it's kind of hectic to sign any of those out when everyone's needing to sign them out. But I got to learn how that works, how all the settings work, and I'm continuing to learn those settings in digital processes this semester, where I've gone to really hone in on how the different white balances work and what ISOs work for specific situations.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned like going from your point and shoot cameras in your phones to to actual like DSLR cameras, and
Mhm.
and so I guess uh
It's a fun jump.
yeah,
It's a difficult jump, but it's a fun jump.
yeah, and it's one of those things too. It's just like at least for me growing up, it's just like I always knew that like oh yeah, like there's a camera like this, a camera like this, but but after understanding like the actual process, it's like oh, it's like so what you're saying is this camera I've been holding around for like the past decade is just like a photographer look at this and be like oh, this is just a toy.
Yeah, yeah. I have a Polaroid camera from the 70s that's sitting on a different desk. I'm borrowing my roommate's desk because the lighting's better here. Um, Go figure, I find the lighting better over here. But it is sitting over there. I also have my own personal camera sitting over there, and it's just everything feels right in the world when I have a camera in my hand, is what it boils down to.
Yeah. And I mean, even for me, like with doing, video stuff, like I feel like I always, I guess anyone who has seen me like in 2023 will see that I like almost always have my camera on me because I feel like it's always where the small moments that you want to capture are always when you don't have your camera on you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I've noticed that a lot.
Yeah, even when you carry like your camera around, at least for me, sometimes it feels like there's never anything really interesting happening. But then, like as soon as you don't, it's just like, oh look, a random parade showed up out of nowhere, or
That was that was basically what boiled. You just summarized an entire event I did photography for a couple weekends ago. I set down the camera for 2 seconds.
wow. Well, definitely, if you're able to like go into that a little bit more, feel free.
Yeah, totally. Funny enough, I actually have both drives of photos open, which I will send to you after this, so you actually have access to them. Um, so a couple weekends ago, I took part in doing photography for a crisis simulation that Flyer Public Relations does every year. OSU also does the same thing. Um, for whatever reason, we decided a hurricane in Ohio made sense, like an actual hurricane in Ohio, not like, oh, a tropical storm that blew over from a hurricane. Because we were playing into the fact that the Miami River flooded 110 years ago. Um, so what they did is that we had the professionals, like the journalists and like everyone that you would be working with in this kind of scenario there, and people that want to go into these professions working in various different teams and learning how to do mock conferences, how to write like articles and like do it live essentially. And it was a really interesting way of doing it. Um, so I was making my rounds in this building, and every single time I like stopped for a second to just check the photos to make sure that they looked good, something fun would happen in a room like a few feet away from me, and I had to immediately bolt.
Wow, that definitely feels, in my opinion, like very relatable in the sense that like even for like I said for all the video stuff I do, I feel like I don't know. It's sometimes like the magic of being somewhere at the right place at the right time, and experiencing it firsthand. But then I don't know. It's just like for some of those special moments, it's just like no matter how hard you try, it's like you just can't capture them unless you happen to
No.
be, unless you just happen to just do that and it's a pure coincidence.
At the beginning, I was because like you see a camera, you're suddenly acting like, hey, there's a camera there. I'm like, I am not here. I'm in all black for a reason. I am not here. And eventually people just settled, and I was able to like get photos that I was actually trying to aim for. And I feel like I captured the event pretty well, personally.
Well, that's good to hear, and I definitely feel like it takes people like a moment of adjustment to realize like it's not the camera person's here like everyone like either hide away or like get into your poses like no it's like you said we're not here just keep on doing what you're doing and let us capture the moment.
The more immersed people got, so even I got immersed, even though I wasn't actively participating in like doing the conferences and all that. Um, I get I also got very immersed, so when everyone else did, it was very easy to get the photos I was aiming for.
That's good. And what would you say like has been your favorite, photography experience out of the several years that you've been doing this, whether as, whether for your point and shoot camera when you were younger to, to now doing this a little bit more professionally?
Honestly, that crisis simulator was my favorite by far. I had done a banquet hooding ceremony a couple days prior, and while that one was fun, it's difficult to get doctors to actually stand where we asked them to. Because these are students that completed their dissertations and they're excited. Um, so oftentimes I was just like, screw it, I'm taking the camera off the tripod and doing this myself.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, sometimes as much as you'd really want, like, the steady tripod, the tripod shot, like, sometimes you just have to pick up, do whatever you're going to do handheld and just,
The tripod was also just being finicky.
I very much relate to that in so many different aspects that there's not enough time in the world to explain that. But so yeah, but you mentioned earlier that of course, being in your high school, your high school class definitely allowed for you to expand on your worldview of photography and even like the history of it and a little bit more about how you can use it. And so were you able to progress with that like throughout high school? And when did you decide that this is what you wanted to pursue for college?
I learned pretty quickly from that class that this was something I wanted to do. I just needed a better mentor. Her style of teaching was to hand you a notes packet and have you fill it out that way, and that's just not how you teach photography. Photography is extremely hands-on. You have to have the camera in your hand and playing with it and learning how what this switch does, what that button does. And she just kind of handed us a note packet and would just talk very monotone to the class, and that's not great at 9 in the morning. Um, we did a written test, and I was one of two people that passed, barely.
Well, I'm glad that you were one of the two people that were able to pass. Now, out of curiosity, how many people were in your class?
Not many. Generally, classes like that are trying to emulate a college art studio course are like maybe like 10 to 15 people at most. It's designed in a way that you're able to do more one-on-one time with the person that's teaching you, whether that be in high school or a professor at college. Um, so that way you're really truly understanding the material instead of having 40 people in a room and not being able to get to it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense though. But like I said, I'm glad that you were able to pass the class and and strive with it and continuing to go into it. And so overall, like, how was your high school experience overall, like aside from just your photography class?
I mean, if you ignore the pandemic, um, my high school experience was actually pretty good. I'm from Buffalo, New York, so we're talking about a relatively progressive area and being able to more freely express yourself because we had everything from our Gay Straight Alliance where we would do for Pride Month we would hang up flags, which is honestly really sweet. I would walk into like the front doors and behind the front desk there's a large flag already set up and ready to go. Um, our principal even joined in on the Pride parades, which was honestly I love that man. But it's it's a relatively trying to find the right way to phrase it because that Amherst itself, like as a town, is huge. We have three different school districts in total that I'm aware of. Williamsville being the largest of them, and so Amherst, the district that I was in, was relatively small by comparison. I think my graduating class was only 250 people. It wasn't that big, and we're talking about 1,000 students running around this um, high school at any given day. And so you had everyone from fully decked out in goth stuff to people that were in athletic stuff, but you had the entire spectrum.
But nevertheless, I'm glad that you were at least able to, to be in an area where you can truly represent yourself and be who you are.
Any name change I made, it was taken without any kind of question, which is really sweet.
I'm really glad to hear that. And of course, you mentioned that the pandemic was in the midst of that too. So how was that to really navigate for you?
That was stressful. That was the latter half of my sophomore year when it started. I had just about a month prior. Oh gosh, that's eerie. About a month prior, had just finished the major musical for the year, which was Titanic. Um, and so we were jumping back into getting stuff done. I was in an honor science course at the time, which is already hectic to try and do in a normal school year. Um, so having to learn that and navigate a completely digital world for classes now was very strange. junior year, I did that again, where I was fully remote. Not by my choice, but it was my father's choice. For the sake of safety, and I completely understand that. And I eventually ended up going in person, because my grades were suffering. Thank you, honors count. Um, and my grades started to come back up. I think I just do better in an in-person setting. I think a lot of people do, but I especially thrive a lot better.
Well, definitely, everyone definitely has, a learning preference that works for them. And like for me, I feel like, you know, I don't know. I'm a person that you just throw me an environment, I'll figure it out. Like,
I usually am as well, but that was just too sudden of a shift for me personally that my brain could not keep up.
Yeah, I know for me, like when the pandemic hit, I was sort of in my first semester of college, doing college a semester early, but
Mm.
I think it was a very weird shift because it was just like it was in the middle of like our college spring break, and it's just like, oh,
Ooh,
like it was funny. We
that
were
is a way
getting
to start.
Yeah, we were getting all these frantic emails. Like we would get a different class update like every 12 minutes or so. That's just like,
Friday the 13th was our last day of in-person classes, which is eerie on its own.
yeah, and even more eerie that the production that you said that y'all were doing right beforehand was the Titanic of all things.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's a little eerie.
Yeah, well, I guess that there may have been some little foreshadowing there. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, to look back at these experiences, and so w- and so during the time of the pre-pandemic stresses, and then going straight into online world for you, and then easing out of that. So, were you able to to personally take away stuff from that, and grow as a person at all from that?
Um, I learned very quickly that I just do not do well doing academic stuff, like classes from home, because you have both my little brother and I doing this at the same time. So he's struggling with it. I'm struggling with it. A bunch of my teachers were not trained in Google Classroom, and we had to like immediately like make a bunch of them for this. Um, so you had all those struggles. You had to learn Zoom of all things, which was that was an experience. Um, and oftentimes classes were canceled anyway, so I would sit there and be like, "Oh, huh."
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think like I feel like everyone's experience is very different when it comes to that. And I know, like I was saying, for me, I think the shift mid semester I think threw me off a little because I had a routine I'd finally gotten adjusted to.
Mhm.
Like I said, finally getting into college atmosphere, and it's like, oh well, apparently we're not doing that anymore.
Goodbye.
Um, but nevertheless, though, yeah, I think because if you don't know, I'm actually a online graduate student, and I feel like once, for me, it was just like once I got into an intentional online semester, it's like, okay, I at least know where I stand and can improve from here instead of sort of being thrust into a different environment like that. But I'm
Those
glad
weeks were
it.
also just a massive blur for me.
Yeah, like I would say what's hard is like I think when you're looking back at your life, like you experience different life experiences that you can look back at, but
Mhm.
when you're not able to have some of these experiences, it just like you said, it becomes all a blur, and like especially if calendars aren't relevant, it's just like, oh well,
Oh, the calendar is definitely not relevant.
yeah, it's just like, oh well, at some
Well,
point in
it was
time.
a little because our cohorts were so odd. Why? I love Amherst to death, but that was Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday were our two cohorts.
That sounds
Wednesday was
confusing.
all online.
That sounds very confusing.
It was. It was. It was just like, why? No.
Wow. But I mean, but nevertheless, though, you mentioned that you grew up you know, in New York State, but how did you end up in the University of Dayton by any chance?
Oh, I love telling the story. So I was, this was summer leading into senior year. I was in the middle of cleaning up my rooms. It was, it seemed better days. The ways of being an artist is that it's just just organized chaos everywhere. Um, and on the ground was a letter from UD, funny enough, and I see a little sticker that says scholarship estimate enclosed. I'm like, okay, now I have to look at this. So I open it, and it was like 100 grand, I believe, is what it said, if I remember right. Yeah. I think it's in a college folder somewhere at home. And I'm like, I need to show my father this. What the hell? So I show him. He's like, you should apply because that's just up to for all 4 years. That's not even including the textbook scholarship that they used to do. Which if you would complete your FAFSA by February 1st of your senior year, you would get that textbook scholarship. It's 4 grand for all 4 years, which definitely has helped with the cost of textbook stuff and all the kits I've needed for being an art student. um, so that's how I've even found out about this place to begin with. I was not even aware. I was already looking at a school in Ohio. I think it's about an hour or two out from here. It's Baldwin Wallace. I was looking at stage management with them because I was at the time looking into doing theater stuff for a career and doing lighting design. And I ended up going a completely different route because this place felt better for me personally, and also the money was substantial. um, so I applied. I found out November 2nd that I got accepted, and I committed. I think April is when I committed.
I'm so glad that they were able to provide you that, yeah, that monetary help there, because, you know, because I mean that is definitely tremendous. I mean, especially with that amount. I mean, that's a lot.
We just finished Donor Appreciation Week, and a lot of that is donor funded. A conference I was at earlier this month was also donor funded. Hotel, food, like all of that was completely covered by him, and I love that man to death because he does this every year.
Wow, well, that is extraordinary that you're, yeah, able to participate in all of this. And so how was the process for you? Moving for college. Going from your home in New York to to Dayton. Was there a big adjustment period for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're talking about someone from the East Coast jumping 2 states over into the Midwest, um, and learning very quickly how different things are here, in comparison. Because in New York, you can be as ragey as you please. Everyone else is very ragey. The road rage is ridiculous in New York. It doesn't matter where you are in New York, it's road rage everywhere. But here, people are incredibly sweet. Like it's along the lines of like what you expect from like a Canadian. Like it's along that line, unless you're Quebecois, in which case, different breed. Um, so I had to adjust to that and the way because from New York. I have lived in Buffalo pretty much my entire life. I've lived in two different suburbs, um, one of which I don't even remember moving from. um, and so I've moving from everything I've ever known to a completely different place and having to relearn everything and understanding how things work here and dealing with a different community was a large adjustment. I was homesick for a good couple of weeks before I really settled.
Well, overall, how were you able to, I guess, you know, to adjust to, to being there, especially, being homesick the first few weeks? Was it like getting involved with everything that's really, I guess, help you feel more comfortable?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had joined a Discord server over the summer after I got my UD email, um, that allowed me to gain access to one of our LGBT groups on campus. Unfortunately, it's dying. It's really sad to see it go. Um, but um, I joined that and I quickly picked up a friend group from there. Um, find out that's how I met Lenny. Because he lived in the same door building as I was assigned to that year. And so picked up talking, and I very quickly gained a friend group that I already had on campus. And that was one of the concerns my mother had, funny enough, was me not having a friend group and having to rebuild. I'm like, well, I did it. And I quickly made friends in the art department, and I'm still friends with a lot of them even now.
Well, that's really great that you were able to, I mean, to make a friend group and, and use that, that Discord server to meet people, and find different organizations, even if the organizations may not fully exist anymore.
Mm. Honestly, campus involvement is one of the best ways to meet people on this campus. It's a mid-sized campus. It's about 10,000 people, if I recall. Um, so it's very easy to find your tribe.
I'm so glad. But like I said, I'm glad that you were able to, to find your group and, your tribe and, and really get adjusted to, to the campus. And I know that, and I know that within your own experience that you also have experience with podcasting.
Yes. That was quite the interesting way to start my career. Um, so the internship at the Human Rights Center is actually my first ever job I've had, and that's straight out of high school. And it's also a very, very competitive internship to even get because it's on campus. And also a fantastic resume builder. They were looking for someone um, who had some experience with video production and audio engineering, which I got from high school during my senior years. I took a videography course, um, so they could kickstart that podcast in the first place. It's something that they had been planning before I was even there to begin with, and I was part of them kicking off the first season. Um, so I got the job. I started October 5th. Um, gosh, a year and a month already. Um, and so we kicked off doing the first season as sexual violence on college campuses. So we talked to various people, anywhere from the Title IX office to someone that's actually a professor of mine now, um, and talking with professionals in these fields. Our second season is environmental justice and indigenous rights. Season three is in regards to a conference that we did this year.
Well, that is really, great that you were able to have that opportunity, especially for a competitive one. I'm so glad that you were able to get it.
I'm glad I did too. I did it with a garbage high school resume I wrote sophomore year.
Wow. Well, at least it was able to work out for you. Even if it wasn't the most impressive resume in your opinion, at least you were able to get the opportunity.
I think the interview skills is what saved me in that one.
Well, that's really a really good skill to have, and so overall, like, what was your experience like? Working with the Human Rights Center, and yeah, and was that like a field that you were interested in prior to applying for the internship?
I've always been really interested in social justice and human rights and like activist stuff. It's just part of my life and my identity. And I really dove into it after I started my internship. And so much so, I briefly considered a minor in human rights. But my advisor encouraged me to do moral courage project instead, which would let me be in the field. And we're going to Atlanta for Stop Cop City in May, where I will be able to photograph and do interviews and help with another podcast, and get to add something really cool to my arsenal.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, that's really cool that you're able to get all these diversified experiences, from when you were younger to, to now. But, but really also growing your, like I said, your passions and, photography. And then also, like you said, as a part of your nature with your human rights activism. And so, but yeah, and so it's really interesting though, like, hearing like your journey though, and everything that you've been doing. And so what are some other experiences like outside of just your major in photography work that, you enjoy doing in the modern day?
Um, I go to a lot of events both on and off campus when I have time, because my workload is really intense. Um, One of the things that Dayton does is we do First Friday downtown, where you're able to go and see other artists and support small businesses and like get to really see other people's work and how they handle things and see their different backgrounds, their different cultures. And I love immersing myself in that side of things as someone who is white.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to, like I said, immerse yourself in different, in different cultures, and and continue to personally learn, as well. And so, yeah. But I mean, overall, I've been really enjoying, like I said, our discussion and hearing a little bit more as to, what you do. And so, first of all, as we're ending out the, this fall 2023 semester, first of all, can you believe that we're, already ending out the semester? Like, didn't we just start?
Oh my gosh. I swear I blinked. I blinked and next thing I knew, I had 48-hour notice to get my roommate moved in. Um, because I had a vacancy and now I'm sitting here doing a podcast interview. What, 4 weeks before? Gosh, yeah, 4 weeks. 4 weeks before finals.
Wow, that's crazy. But I
That moved
mean,
fast.
but yeah, yeah. So so right now in your sophomore year, yeah, how would you say that everything has been thus far compared to your freshman year?
Um, Definitely a lot better. Freshman year was definitely me really adjusting to college life and being away from home for the first time. I had a single my freshman year. Don't ask me how, I have no idea. That was luck of the draw. Um, and really discovering myself and coming into my own freshman year because it was my first time away from parental influence and being able to like really explore who I am as a person and what my values are and what I want to really be doing with my life.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to, like I said, I mean, to use this semester thus far to, like I said, to become to better understand who you are, as a person, and just continuing to, to strive and yeah, and I guess as we begin wrapping up this discussion too, I did want to ask. So I know a lot of the work that you do it to to make an impact, at least for your photography work, and as you're saying at the beginning, to tell a story without words. And so I guess to begin closing out, so what does it mean to you to to be able to tell a story?
For me, it's lifting the voices of those otherwise unheard, um, from every different community you can think of. Anyone that's caught up in redlining, because that's a major problem here in Dayton, to homeless communities, to those victims of DV and other problems, and those who work to help in those situations. I love being able to show the progress that society is making and the progress that we still need to make.
I've really enjoyed this this conversation that we've been having, and like I said, I really appreciate you taking your time, and and speaking with me, and also too that this is not your first experience with my podcast, since you said you listened watched one of my other episodes prior to even meeting
Yeah,
me.
I did. um, it was sent to me by Lenny, funny enough. Like, yeah, I know.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to to watch my discussion with him. I really enjoyed that discussion as much as I like I said, I love this one. And so how was it for you, I guess, being here on the opposite side of of doing podcasts, since you're oftentimes more on the producer side?
I really enjoy it. Like, genuinely, I do enjoy it. I love the podcasting really now. The producer side of it. I love working behind the scenes. But this is also really fun. I also just really enjoy podcasts, so go figure.
Well, I'm glad that you do enjoy them, and yeah, and I'm also glad that like I said, you had an opportunity to be on here, a podcast that you just just watched a few weeks ago.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's always fun, being able to make these connections, and yeah, and I love doing this because you really never know who you're going to, who you're going to meet. But I very much appreciate you, like I said, for first watching the podcast and for now being on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to check out, your work and everything that you do, where's the best place for them to check you out?
LinkedIn has all of it posted up all in one place, so it's easy to access. I need to fix one of the links. Oops. Um, but aside from there, there's also my Instagram. I have a personal, and I also have a photography Instagram um, that has all of my photos posted and some of like my personal life where I'm just going about my day-to-day life, also doing storytelling through photos that I'm not taking with a professional camera.
I love that. And for anyone to potentially follow them, what are the names of the Instagram accounts if you happen to know offhand?
I do, but those are hard to spell. Because I am the definition of an alternative kid stuck in 2009. Let me pull up. It was the personal ones. I think I have my photography one linked here. I don't. I'll fix that. Um, MXD and Axid G. Why am I failing at this? HT period underscore period Raven is my personal.
Awesome. Good to know. And last but certainly not least, I did want to allow a moment for you to go ahead and close out just our discussion, whether it be a thought, a message, or whatever case may be. The floor is all yours.
Oh gosh, you're playing a dangerous game with that. um, whatever you're doing in life, whatever is speaking to you most, whatever is your calling for you, try to make a story out of it, whether that be with words, without words, with technology, without technology. Do it in some way they feel will make an impact.
I love that. Thank you so much for, like I said,
Yeah,
for
of
coming on the
course.
show. And I have really appreciated this discussion. Be sure to keep in touch.
Will do.
Yeah. Well, until next time, everyone, have a wonderful day, everyone. And let's continue on our mission to bring people together. I'll see y'all next week. Take care.